Live from Seville, this is The Twilight Show with Harry Waters, and you are listening live.
Good afternoon, good evening, good night. I hope you're well. I am well. I'm well, but I'm also chilly. It's not particularly warm here in Seville at the moment. If you could see me, you would see I'm wearing my trusty woolly hat to keep me warm from the icy cold. I think it's probably about 9 degrees, to be honest. So it's not actually all that bad. I can see my wonderful guest has entered without any hitches thus far. So that's good news. I will introduce her very soon. Don't worry. I will introduce her soon. But before that, I am going to let you know about the week that was since I last spoke to you when we were talking about emergent language. I got kind of obsessed with emergent language in my classes this week, and built on various different phrases that came out, and I've made sure that all of my students now are using different greetings that came up in the class, and yeah, they wanted to ask how they could say that they were fine, but not just saying I'm fine. So they're all now saying I'm all right, which was funny at first because I'm all right here and there. I'm all right. And then I said, "Oh, how's your partner?" And they said, "Well, she's I'm all right." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we need to work on that one. She's all right, or I'm all right. I'm all right. No, I'm all right. Okay." So yeah, they're seven. Okay, it's not like it, it's not a high advanced level class, but yeah, it's been great. It's been fun working on what they wanted to know, and stuff like that, and coming up with this new language. We are working on food at the moment, so we did a lot of fun things, and we worked on a menu, and now everybody knows what fish fingers are. They also know. They also know what vegan fish fingers are, which is quite funny because obviously vegan fish doesn't actually exist. But yeah, so we were talking about cauliflower fish fingers and how they really did taste pretty good. So if you are at your local Lidl anytime soon, not to promote or anything, you may well be able to get your hands on some delightful vegan fish fingers. So yeah, that was one of my students decided her name that day be Fish Fingers. So now Jimena has decided that her name will be Fish Fingers. That emerged from the class, which is yeah. So that was one thing that happened this week. We're also preparing here for Carnival, which is coming up in February. Towards the end of February, on the 18th, I believe it is. So there's been lots of repurposing of old clothes to make new clothes, and fashioning of leaves from different places, and lots of green, and all of these outfits are coming together. At which point I discovered I won't actually be able to attend the carnival, much to my dismay, as I've been asked to go and give a few talks. So I will be off on a teacher training week that week, which is very exciting, to be honest. I'm very much looking forward to it. I do love a week of intensive teacher training. It does mean, however, I'll be away from Fish Fingers and the gang. So yeah, it will be different, but I'm sure it will be fun nonetheless. It'll be nice to be doing some teacher training again with real people, face to face, and yeah, being able to actually look into people's eyes is something that I never thought I would be so grateful for. This last year or so, after obviously we had, we don't need to go over everything where we went online and stuff like that, where we all lost our minds and so on and so forth. But this being able to see people and actually connect with people makes a huge difference for me. Don't get me wrong, I love a good webinar. I love giving webinars. I love being involved in webinars. But there's something about the human connection that you can't quite replace in any other way. And so there are those aspects, of course, that I'm so delighted to be back in touch with as we're back in the classroom. So as I mentioned there about this going online, we all did it. It was tricky for everybody, and it certainly stunted a lot of what we were doing, but it also enhanced a lot of what we were doing. And we're going to focus on some really excellent things today. And when I do when I do bring my guest in, which will be very soon, don't worry. We're going to talk about STEAM education, social emotional learning, and creativity. Some pretty heavy topics, and it would be nice to look at them in relation of both in our online learning sphere, but also in our presential. That's how we say it in Spanish, face-to-face learning. So I will very shortly be asking my wonderful guest to join us, but before that, just
This
have a
show is brought to
listen
you in
closely.
partnership. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides, and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
So there we are. That is who we are brought to you by John Catt. And now I'm going to introduce my wonderful guest, who is here. I can see her in the background. She's warned that there may be a spotty connection. Now, this is because, now, I have to say this, she is currently living the dream and being on a boat. Now, who doesn't want to be on a boat? If you can tell me anyone that doesn't want to be on a boat, then, well, maybe somebody who's not particularly fond of the water. But anyway, I'm delighted to welcome a creative learning consultant and therapist. It's Bianca Peel. We connected a little while ago over environmental issues, unsurprisingly, as that's how I connect with most people. But she deals with a whole lot more than I'm not going to say just the environment, because I know it's massive. So, Bianca, if possible, if you could unmute yourself and come in, it would be delightful to have you in here. Hello.
Hi, Harry. How's it going? Thanks for having me on the
It's
show.
it's going very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Now, I think I invited you to come on the show probably about forever ago.
Yeah, yeah. It was around about, I think it was November or December, and then life got in the way, you know.
It does that, doesn't it? It's
Yeah. So
so annoying. It's
yeah,
so
I know.
annoying. Why does it
Yeah,
always do that? But you're here now.
yeah.
You made it, and I'm delighted to
Yay.
have you on.
Thank you so much. I have to apologize in advance. My connection is quite spotty. As you said, I am currently on a canal boat in cold temperatures, so um, trying to get a signal through the big metal case that's around me sometimes doesn't work.
It must be quite chilly, actually, on a boat. Do you have central heating?
I'd like to say yes, but no. We have a wood burner, um, which we use when we're not plugged into the mains. We're currently plugged into the mains at the moment now, so we can use heaters. So that's
Okay
funny.
then.
But we try not to do it too much because being environmentally conscious and all, we try to be a bit more sustainable with what we do in terms of heating. So, like
Yeah.
you said, upcycling clothing to make it warmer and all those kinds of things come in
Yeah.
handy.
Exactly. Um, all of these. Yeah, I think I've not I've not worn pajama pants, trousers for quite a few days, and that's underneath whatever else I'm wearing. So and it's not that cold here in Spain. The only difference is the houses really
Yeah,
aren't built for the cold. So if it's 10
yeah, yeah.
degrees outside, it's 8 degrees inside because it's keeping you cool
Oh
just in
goodness, yeah.
case. So yeah, it's been quite
I hear you.
chilly. Yeah, and I imagine
Whatever
it's
works
similar
to
on a
keep
boat.
keep the needs satisfied.
Exactly. So before we continue talking about how cold it is, I would like to know a little bit about you. So how did you get to where you are, and what is a creative learning consultant and therapist?
Right, I know. So it all started with a backpacking trip many years ago, to explore living in another country and working with disadvantaged youth. And after that, I was like, right, I want to be working with people. I want to be working in education. I want to be bringing about change. How do I get there? So, with many meandering twists and turns along the route, I qualified as a language teacher, specifically English language teaching, like we are both in. I qualified as a Montessori teacher. I also worked as a tutor at academic level in universities, and then I got into holistic approaches to learning and qualified as a creative therapist, which involves using the arts for healing purposes. So when you combine all of the different pedagogy and academic and educational approaches together, thus becomes Bianca Peel, multidisciplinary learning consultant and creative therapist.
All the things.
All of
All the
them together. So basically what that means is I draw upon all of the knowledge that I have throughout the different spectrums of educational contexts and use that to help schools, individuals, organizations approach learning and learning design in a way that's holistic, interdisciplinary, uh, interpersonal, interconnected, and basically preparing people for the future that none of us really know what's to come. So
That's it sounds like a tall order. It sounds
yeah,
very difficult, very, very difficult.
yeah, I thought that at first, but really what had happened was, as with all of us, when the COVID pandemic hit, a lot of people were impacted in different ways. And for me, it involved being out of work suddenly and falling through the cracks in a lot of contexts. So I decided to put all the knowledge and skills that I have into one basket and bet on myself and set up my own company. And that's how it came about. And since then, I've worked on some meaningful and incredible projects that encompass social emotional learning, environmental education, and 21st century learning. So it actually, that bet that I made is so far so good.
I think we made a similar bet, to be honest, because something very similar happened to myself. I
Yeah,
found myself, in the September of 2020 without work, and it was like, right, it's now or never with what I wanted to do, and
yes.
turned out what I wanted to do was what I loved doing, and
Right?
while
Isn't
it
it crazy when you connect passion to purpose, what wonderful things come about?
It really is. It really is. Now, I'm going to ask you something before we get into the nitty gritty. Now, something related to this. Now, that
Yes.
something I've found. Oh, Michelle's come in, so I'm going to say hello to Michelle. I've just seen her in the chat there. So, hi, Michelle.
Hmm.
Something completely to do with this. I imagine Michelle can actually also identify with this, and that
Yes.
is when you are so invested in your work and you are so passionate about your work, and you do, you really love it, and you feel like it has meaning and it gives meaning. How hard do you find it to actually disconnect from your work?
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat that? You cut out there
Oh,
for a
of
second.
course, no, not a problem. So when you are as involved as you are with your work and you are as attached as you are to your work, and
Yeah.
you feel the purpose and you have the meaning, how hard is it for you to kind of disconnect from your work?
That's a really, really important and relevant question right now to the title of our show today. Last year was a really busy year for me, and when you work for yourself, it's really hard to give yourself holidays because
Hmm.
you think, oh, this opportunity has just come up, so I really need to do it because I don't know if it'll come up again. But the reality is, by doing that, you're just emptying your cup even more each time. And without taking those breaks or finding ways to nourish yourself in physically, emotionally, mentally, then your cup starts to empty rapidly, and then you're not actually delivering um, to your passion like you want to. So to answer your question, how do I disconnect? Well, I have to schedule it in. Um, So part of it is scheduling it in, but also I think the biggest part is having a lot of self-awareness, being able to check in with myself and find out, well, am I meeting my basic needs first and foremost, and how full is this cup? So once I can recognize those things, I can then take steps to either continue working or go, you know what, it's okay to take a break now and do the things that help to nourish myself so that I can then use what I've got to help other people.
You see, I had a
What about
very
you? What do you do?
well, I was about to say, today I had a very fill my cup moment. So I'm working on a few projects at
Yeah,
the moment, and there's some other things that are coming up. And my wife said to me if I would like to go into the town centre with her because she had a meeting about an exhibition she has coming up.
yeah.
She's at an international art fair, by the way, just to show off there. Sorry.
Mm,
So
nice.
she was going in to see the gallery owner who's sending her to the exhibition. And she said, "Do you want to
Yeah.
come in and you can just hang around and then we can go and have lunch together?" And I had a lot of work on, and I said, "I'm all right, actually.
Hmm.
I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to finish this work." So I carried on making the PowerPoint
Yeah.
I was making. Now, something brilliant happened then was my wife had actually forgotten her wallet. So she called me up and said, "I've forgotten my wallet. Can you just get the bus down into town and come and meet me?
Yeah.
And then we could go and have lunch." And so we did. And it was that moment where I was like, why didn't I just go in the first place? I could have
Right.
just gone
Yeah.
down. And, it was much nicer to have gone and had lunch with her than to sit at my desk and then think, no, I should go and eat some cereal or something before I start. So, yeah, I really had one of those moments. But otherwise, I don't know. I think my most difficult thing is not stopping working, it's stopping thinking about working.
Oh
the
yeah.
ideas
Oh
will
yeah.
keep
That's
coming in. It's
that's a
like, I
really hard one.
need to not think about that now, or stay in the moment. So I
Yeah.
find that the trickiest. But
That is
yeah,
challenging. Yes.
walking away
Yeah.
from my
And
desk.
going back to your story,
Go ahead.
when you came back from being at the art gallery in lunch, how much more productive did you become,
Well,
or was there any noticeable difference?
yeah, well, I have two classes in the evenings, so I didn't go back to my writing work, which is fine. I can
Yeah.
continue with that tomorrow, but the classes, there was a lot more energy than had I just gone from in the they were more inventive as well. Instead of doing the classes inside, we have volunteer classes for children in
Hmm.
the village who can't afford to go to language academies. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it in the classroom. We're going to go outside. We're going to do it in the patio. So we did it outside in the front garden, and it was out in the sun, and we were running around up there, and the ideas were different. And had I not gone into the centre, I don't imagine I would have bothered with that. I would have been, let's sit down, let's do this, let's do that. And it would have been much more
Yeah.
traditional, whereas it came up being much more playful. It was much more
Yeah.
fun. It was much more student centered. So, yeah, I don't imagine had I sat here, finished that PowerPoint and gone straight on to the sustainability curriculum I'm writing, I don't imagine
Yeah.
I'd have been in quite the same mood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it's very, very important to take that break away from the norm, so to speak, and like allow yourself to be around creative inspiration and other people and satisfying those basic needs as we hear in Maslow's or Bloom's taxonomy. So, yeah, I totally agree with you.
I think it's really important as well because I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought
Mm,
at all about the fact that my afternoon classes were better than they would have been if I hadn't been to the centre. I think that's something really important that I need to work on, certainly, is realizing when I've
yeah,
done it rather than just, doing it and moving on, but actually stopping and thinking that was good
taking a
to
moment
do
for
that.
reflection, right?
Exactly, exactly. Because I do it in my classes with the language or what we've felt in class or what
Yeah.
we've done, but actually doing it for myself, yeah, I'd not thought of that. So that's actually brilliant,
Gosh,
and that's put a real new
yeah, that's the
spin on
amazing
today.
thing is all of us educators, we're very, very good at parting knowledge and helping others to do better. And we forget to tell ourselves to do the same. And so we go into the classroom with an amazing lesson that is inspiring and motivating and engaging, and it has an element of reflection at the end to help solidify that learning. And then we go home and we're like, oh, that's done, next one,
Yeah,
instead of doing the same thing for ourselves. Yeah. So that's something that I
that's
work with and help people to remember to do, is that it's a very important part of that process.
I do like recognize like how lucky I am with my wife being a photographer. She's also freelance, so you know
Oh, fabulous.
I don't know if it's good for her, but it's good for me. We share an office now. We used to have two separate offices, but now we share an office to keep warmer. So I get to spend all day with her. I get to have lunch with her at home every day. So that going out to have lunch felt like something special. I'm lucky that I get
Yeah,
to be with her every day and spend a lot of time with her. She's unlucky; she has to be
yeah,
with me. I'm incredibly annoying. Um, but yeah, it's just really nice to be able to do it in that kind of different environment, and I
yeah.
noticed in myself that it felt better. But then, like related to that, when it came to the students today in the class, when we went outside and got some vitamin D on our skin, I noticed in
Yeah, there
them,
you go. Yeah,
like at first their behavior was more erratic because it was a whole
of
new
course.
kind of environment, but their
Yeah.
attention was better,
Mhm.
their interest was peaked, like all of these
Yes.
things. We've got a dog as well, so a dog can be a
Mhm.
distraction, but a dog can also be like a great motivation as well. So I just noticed
Yeah.
the classes today were infinitely better. And we were talking about the
Wow.
different things that there were on our menu. There is this, there
Yeah.
are that, and we were building this menu, and yeah, it
Fantastic.
was yeah, it was amazing.
It's amazing how just being in and around nature and natural spaces, the abundance um, of positive effects it has on an individual and a collective. Whenever I'm working with learners, whether it be children or adults, I love to try and either bring the outside in or the inside out.
Exactly that. That's one of the top things that I always speak about in terms of sustainability, not only because it gives you that respect for nature, but the
Hmm.
connection of like being in nature and well-being is, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
it's been scientifically proven hundreds of times. So, it has
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
double benefit of you love nature, and if you love nature, nature loves you, and you can love yourself, and everything's great.
Yes. Exactly. It's that holistic whole approach to life and learning is how everything's connected. And the topics of my specialisms are all revolve around the fact that everything needs to be connected for it to work, and to recognize that those interconnectedness within ourselves and other people and the environment is what makes us unique and special, and but also um, will make whatever we want the future to be possible. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know a lot about social emotional learning. I know a bit. I don't
Okay.
know a huge amount. Now, I try and know as much as I can about as many things as I can. But this is a great
Hmm.
thing for having you on. I'll be able to learn from
Okay.
you. Now, when I
Yeah.
look at school, I am not a big fan of
Yeah.
the education system as it stands. I'm not a huge fan of this endless homework bashing. I've
I
talked
think
about it a
we
lot
are
on LinkedIn and
both equally there. Yeah.
exactly. And then, there's some people suggest, you should take your child out of school and do homeschooling. And now, don't get me wrong. I think there are lots of strengths to homeschooling. I think if you can make it work, it's fantastic. It's great.
Hmm.
It's illegal in Spain, so I wouldn't be able to do that anyway. But one of
Oh,
the
really?
things, yeah, you're not
Oh, wow. I
allowed
didn't
to.
know that.
No, you're not allowed to. You have to, just
Wow.
send your
Interesting.
children off to be battered by the
Did
teachers.
they give a
Um,
justification for why?
uh, I don't know. I've not asked any further, to be honest. I just know that it's illegal. So
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just like I'm not going
Keep
to
in mind,
argue
though.
with. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with the Spanish system as it is. But yeah, one thing that is so important for me about school are the kind of
Yeah.
social skills that somebody, the social awareness and the relationship
Hmm.
skills, and then within that, the self awareness and self management. They come for me. A lot of that comes from being at school, and with my daughter, for example, I see a lot of it coming from within her, and she's 9.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that
Yeah.
all of that should be coming from somebody so young. It should be coming from above.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah,
Um,
how can we sort of? I think it's very important that they learn, but how can we increase this these aspects of social and emotional learning? Before you answer that question, what is social and emotional learning for those people listening who don't know?
Yeah, so there at the moment there's like quite a lot of different frameworks that are under the social and emotional learning umbrella. The one that I'm most familiar with is known as CASEL. Um, so that one's based in America. It's CASEL, and they identify that social and emotional learning involves self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. So these are skill sets and areas for development within social and emotional learning, which if we can find a way to embed it within the learning environment, it will actually drastically change the course of people's lives. Because within each individual element, there are a plethora of skills that are being developed that ultimately help the person become a well-rounded, as we say, or whole. I hate those terms though, but yeah, someone who can manage themselves in a world frankly is constantly changing, that's full of trauma and um, full of stressors. So being able to embed these skills building within from a very young age, like early years, but it's never too late to start, ideally, like with everything, if you can start with early years and work up, then great. But if you can't, just start where you are. Don't worry about what came before. So for example, in terms of self-awareness, if I were to ask you, when I say self-awareness, what kind of skills do you think that involves?
Oh wow, you're putting me on the spot here. I'm the one who asked the questions,
Mm.
Bianca. That's not fair. Uh,
Well, just throw out one
I would
idea.
no, I would say things like today, the self awareness of am I burning out, or do I need to take a break? So
Yeah,
how I'm feeling, is my cup full enough, that kind of thing, and
yeah, exactly.
what
That's it. So it's
are my
recognizing.
stressors,
Yeah,
and that kind of
yeah,
things, recognizing the things that stress me out, recognizing the things
fantastic.
that would be my idea of
Yeah,
self awareness.
brilliant. Yeah, so on a very basic level, self-awareness is that ability to recognize your own emotions, your own thoughts, and your own values, and then using that information to identify and realize how those things influence your behavior. And then also within self-awareness, you're identifying what are your strengths and what are your limitations, and how well your sense of confidence is, or your optimism, and to the extent you have a growth mindset, so to speak. So all these things help someone to then approach life in a different way if they can be nurtured and developed.
I like how you said strengths and limitations as opposed to weaknesses. It,
Well,
it
yeah,
seems
at the end of the day, I hate the word weaknesses because it's very negative. It doesn't it puts the idea in someone's head that they're not good enough, or that something is unattainable. But the reality is something is only unattainable because there are limitations or boundaries, or barriers. So once you identify what they are, you can find ways over them, under them, round them, or through them. So
yeah. There was something you
yeah,
said in there that really jumped out at me, of something that we can teach our kids as parents, but we also needed to be taught in school, and that was the responsible decision making. Now, as a
yes,
parent, it's hard to teach your child to make a responsible decision because they don't want to listen to you because you're their parents. So if you're
Yeah.
suggesting something, it's you telling them what to do rather than help them
Right.
come to a sensible decision that, maybe they don't want to spend that €5 on Pokemon cards. Perhaps they'd like to use it for something later down the line, or,
Hmm.
but not to just do that thing suddenly that immediately comes to mind. And, sometimes those impulsive things are great, not just impulsive buys, obviously.
Hmm. Yeah.
But, to control those emotions, that impulse. But when you're doing it as a parent, it's really hard. I think
It is.
responsible
Yeah.
decision
It's very
making
hard.
needs to be in schools.
It needs to be in schools and it needs to be at home. Um, this is always a
Of course,
challenge
of
because
course, it has to be at home
if
as
you're
well. Don't get
tired
me wrong.
yourself, yeah, if you're tired yourself, um, you already are dealing with stressors of your own. Being tired is one, being hungry, basic things like that, but as well as anything more intense or more traumatic. But the responsible decision making element, that is something, yeah, schools really should be paying more attention to, because within that you're helping the student to learn how to identify what is a problem and what is not a problem, how to analyze a situation in order to solve if there's a problem. you know you're developing skills of evaluating, you're developing skills of reflecting, and really importantly, that element of empathy and ethics is there as well. So your responsibility in terms of ethical responsibility is being developed in that context as well. So responsible decision making is a key element of social and emotional learning, but also just in terms of 21st century learning, they're very valid skills
I,
for now and moving forward.
Yeah, I think therein lies one of the issues with the current system, certainly we have in Spain.
Hmm.
It is a very kind of, spoon-fed
Yes.
system, but not like spoon-fed in a nice way where, you give the kids
No.
all the answers and you
No.
help them, but kind of like they're force-fed. So
Yes.
here are a bunch of dates. They're what you're doing in your history exam. Now you have to learn them. It's rote learning. It's 100%
Yeah,
rote
it's
learning. It
awful.
hasn't changed. And
Mm.
this idea that if they help with responsible decision making and kind of self awareness, this might
Yeah.
this might help our students, but they might then build some character and they might
Yeah.
learn to question things. So, for example, my
Well, this is
daughter,
it.
when
Yeah.
she has to copy her textbook, so she comes home. If she has to do activity 1, 2, and 3, she has to copy everything in the textbook, the whole textbook, into her notebook, and then write the answer underneath. Now, if she was responsible with her decision
Yeah.
making and self-aware, and she could manage her time and realize that stresses her out, that she doesn't want to do 3 hours of homework a night, she'd say to the teacher, "I don't want to do this." But they don't teach
Hmm.
them to say that, and she's scared of the
No,
teacher.
this
And
is
the
it.
teacher
And
doesn't listen to
like,
us either. Sorry.
yeah, this is the thing with rote learning. Okay, yeah, it's effective in some contexts, but and it's beneficial to certain contexts. But in terms of the learner, it's a very small percentage of people who can memorize things. And what it actually does to all the other learners who are not very good with memory-based learning is that it induces stress. And once you induce stress, then as a learner stops learning. So why would you put someone under that stress if you're trying to get them to learn, is the question.
I can't understand it. It's absolutely
Yeah.
remarkable. I could go on and on about how awful the system is here, and they're
But
evaluated
I
with
hear
just
you. I
10
remember from
numbers.
being
Yeah,
at school myself.
it's
Yeah.
awful with just the numbers. But like that's what the kids will come to class, and now we get on really well with some of the parents. They're really lovely. Like they're
Hmm.
in our group of close friends as well. And there's so one of them, the mum comes. She says, "Oh, David was talking to his auntie. He was trying to speak in English, and obviously it wasn't grammatically perfect, but he was really trying. He was giving it a go." And another
Yeah.
parent said, "Oh, Nadia's, she's really trying. I've heard her speak in English for the first time, so thank you so much." The others, a lot of them just come and it's, he got a 10 in his exam. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I don't really care if he got a 10 in his irregular verbs exam. That That doesn't mean anything at all. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know,
The
where's the
traditional
where's the
systems of
learning? Yeah.
education. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar. Did you ever watch the TED Talks of the late Sir Ken Robinson?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh
What a
my gosh.
hero!
Yeah.
What a hero!
So what a hero. Yeah. And he is the ultimate for championing getting rid of the industrialized model and opening up learning to a more holistic, agile, interactive, problem-based, project-based, place-based learning model, things that bring learning relevant to real world and not just confined to that silo, which is the classroom, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
that also awful rote learning classroom that, as you say,
yeah,
stresses so many people. It was great for me because I'm really good at
it was.
memorizing stuff. I can still tell you all the capital cities. You know, it's great for me. I love
Yeah.
that. And my daughter's good at that as well. But there are so many kids that will then be seen as, like, not only they're not academic, but they'll be looked at as stupid. That's how
Mm,
teachers would like. There's one girl in the class now. This for me is the worst thing, and I mentioned it to the teacher. She takes a
yeah.
while to catch up with things. You know, she takes a bit longer to grasp certain concepts. So the teacher calls
Yeah.
her the Canary Islands, because the Canary Islands are an hour behind Spain, and she does it openly in the
That
class to the
is
students. And
horrendous.
like, like that, but the other
I'd
thing
be
about that,
honest, if
how
she was a teacher in my school, there would be disciplinary action for that.
it's horrible, because where's the social awareness in that?
Exactly.
Like, you're
It's
showing the
also
kids
it's
it's
also
okay to
trauma and
tease
stress
people.
inducing. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
you
shocking.
respect
Shocking behavior.
somebody. You respect somebody who's openly bullying somebody else and laughing at it. You know, all that's going to do is show
Yeah.
the other kids, you know, that what they're learning in that it's socially okay to just bully people. That's not cool. So I have
Yeah.
asked her,
That's
like,
not cool
why,
at
and
all.
you know, so yeah, she's very old school. So we talked a bit about self
Yeah.
awareness, and we talked a bit about responsible decision making. Um,
Yes.
let's, after that little outburst that I had, can we talk a bit about social awareness?
Sorry, social awareness. So yes, so this one is so it's really hard to point out one over the other because they're all really important in terms of a person's development and approaches to learning,
Hmm.
In terms of social awareness, that one develops that concept of perspective and empathy, which without empathy, you're always going to have one view of the world, right?
Hmm.
And it will be either the view of the world that you've been taught in your home or the view of the world you've been taught in your school or whatever environment that has pushed you to believe that one way is better than another way. So, in terms of social awareness, um, it's helping people to recognize the diversity that exists within our world, the backgrounds and cultures of other people, the ability to understand what is social and ethically normal in one context compared to your own for behavior, for family, for school, for community, things like this. So it's developing perspective taking, empathy, appreciating diversity, and promoting respect for others, which is exactly what you were just talking about. So
So
making sure we develop social awareness within our learners and ourselves is so important. So clearly, that teacher has no social awareness if she's doing things like that.
yeah, and it's terrible, because, you know, then other kids will jump on it and say that, like, you know,
Hmm.
I've spoken to my
Exactly.
daughter about it, and, you know, the first thing my daughter said was, "Oh, but she laughs at it. You know, the girl laughs at it," and I was like, "Yeah, but I imagine it was you. Like, you'd laugh at it because, you know, you don't want to be seen as, you know, a
You don't want to cause
spoil
the scene.
sport, or exactly, you don't want
Mm,
to cause a scene with a teacher. But if somebody's openly calling you slow and everyone's laughing at you for it, then how would you actually feel?" And she was just like, you're right. It's not
yeah,
really okay.
it's not okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so
That's
it's, you know, those,
promoting lack of respect for others. That's not developing strong relationships. It's going against almost all of the core skills in social and emotional learning.
I've got a brilliant one for you here. Then you'll love this one.
Yeah, go
The
for it.
head teacher at the school is very, very, very old school. He's been there for I think about 38 years. He was due to
Mm.
retire 6 years ago, but he keeps going.
Oh
And
dear.
the other day, there's a very difficult student in the class, in my daughter's
Excuse me.
class.
Yeah.
He has a lot of issues. He's been kept back a year. He has a lot of family issues. He has ADHD as
Hmm.
well. So he has a, and he's very disruptive in the class. And it's not managed particularly well by the teacher. But then, as we were standing, I was standing there waiting for my daughter to come out, and this young lad was
Yeah.
there, and his carer was nowhere to be seen. His
Hmm.
guardian, who was coming to collect him, was nowhere to be seen. And he said to the head teacher, as a joke, "I'll come home with you." Just laughing about it. And the head teacher said to him, "Well, you won't come home with me because if you get in my car, I'll throw you out the window onto the train tracks." And then
Oh my
laughed at it
God.
like it was some kind of hilarious joke. And I was just saying,
That's horrendous.
how is this okay? This is a person who's in a position where he can't be fired. He's been with the way the system is,
Mm.
he can't be removed from his position. And the other parents would just be like, "Oh, that's just the way he is. He's old school."
Yeah, no,
So
that's not acceptable. That taking on that narrative of this is the way it's always been done, and that this kind of behavior is acceptable because he's always been like that. That's not okay. Um, yeah, that person is in a position of power and responsibility with a duty of care, and by making a comment like that to that child who is already clearly in a trauma situation, is just adding to demolishing that child's self-confidence.
Well, exactly, and he said it in front of other teachers, parents, other students. Like, you know, what would it have cost him to have said in that moment? "Do you know what, mate? I'd love to take you home, but I'm not allowed to. So we'll just wait here for your mum."
Yeah,
Like, how
exactly.
hard would that have been?
Something to note though, yeah, something to note though is as much as that story shocks us and angers us, it's also important to recognize that every single person in that environment when something like that happened has a responsibility. So when someone behaves in this kind of way, if it invokes anger in you because it's wrong or there's a sense of um, injustice there, that's when it's our responsibility as humans to stand up for each other and care for each other. So it's important that yes, that individual, he needs re-educated somehow, um,
Yeah,
but the people around also need to not fear speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves.
yeah, yeah, absolutely right. Like in that situation,
Hmm.
I know I should have said something. I've spoken to my
Mm.
daughter's teacher about certain
Hindsight's the
other things
beautiful
in
thing as
class.
well, though.
But yeah, in that moment, I was just so shocked, and it was, as
Shocked,
like,
yeah,
and I just like looked at the other mums who were there waiting, and I was just like, "What?
yeah,
Did he just say that?" And it's like, you know,
yeah.
but yeah, this is a man
Gosh.
that stopped smoking in the school 2 years ago. He stopped smoking in his office 2 years ago after the
Oh wow.
amount of pressure that took.
Well,
It was, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Well, it sounds like the school that you're talking about could definitely benefit from some interventions or some creative thinking infusions, which would help turn the culture
Oh,
and reestablish some core values.
it definitely would. And now let's look a little bit towards. Well, we'll look at relationship skills in a second. But you mentioned creativity, and I'm going to continue with
Mm,
this case study as it is. We have an
yeah.
allotment at the school, um,
Okay.
and the kids, they go and plant there, and I go along for that. Not always, obviously. I go along
Yeah.
whenever I can, and we turn that hour
Mm,
of whatever they've come down from, if they've been in maths, if they've been in whatever, that becomes an hour of being at the allotment and speaking in English, and doing other fun things in English,
hmm.
talking about planting, and that side of things. And again, you see that moment, how excited the students are, and it's a step in the right
Yeah.
direction. As far as
It
schools
is.
go
Yeah.
in Spain, it's okay. the school system is terrible.
Yeah.
So, and you just see that
You gotta
in
you
them.
gotta make best with what you're given, right?
Exactly. And you see those moments are absolutely fantastic because they just, I don't know, there's this new creativity and something new and exciting that, they come alive and they're happier to
Well, this
try
is it.
different things in English. And
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
And it's an opportunity to develop that essential skill of creative thinking. If you think back to Steve Jobs, I think everyone knows who Steve Jobs is, right? He once said that creativity is just about connecting things. And if you were to
Hmm.
ask an artist how they came about creating what they've created, they find it difficult to explain it because it's just what they do. But the thing about creative people, or people who've cultivated creative skills and given time and energy to doing that, they start to see the connections between everything, which helps them to then problem solve, to find solutions to things, to have more of a deeper appreciation of the natural environment and how important it is for our survival. So that's a wonderful project, and it has so much opportunity and scope for you and other teachers to use. Like, the maths teacher could totally be down there as well, and so
Oh,
could the
yeah.
geography teacher, and so could the history teacher. There's so many ways that you can use an allotment to teach all the other subjects within the school,
Oh, absolutely. But
or at
what the
least
teachers then see
complement it.
is, yeah, they then see it as an opportunity for them to have an hour to go and chill quite often. So not all of them, some of them do
Oh
come and
dear,
join
yeah.
in and like have fun, and join in with the songs, and help with different bits
Yeah.
and pieces. But there are some that just kind of get down there and go, "Oof, there you go. Well, that's me an hour free." And it's like, yeah, not exactly what
Mm,
it's meant for. But
no,
there are those people in every walk of life who will take
there
an
are.
opportunity to chill and relax whenever they can. But I wanted to
Yeah.
mention something about creativity there. Now, you touched on it. You
Yeah.
mentioned creative thinking. Now, I absolutely love that you
Yeah.
said that because something that I get with a lot of my students here in Spain is, oh, I'm not creative. And what they mean by I'm not creative is I'm not very good at drawing. Or
Yes,
they can't play a
exactly.
musical instrument. That is what they mean. I'm not creative
This
means
is it.
I
Yeah.
can't play a musical instrument or I can't draw. And that's the end of what they
Yeah.
think creativity is.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing that we need to educate people about, is that there is a difference between thinking creatively and thinking like an artist, right? Okay. So um, think about this. If you remember, if you go back to when you were at school, or when you were a child, and you were doing something you shouldn't be doing and you got caught.
Hmm.
Now, most people's first reaction is to find a way out of it. Not to admit that they're
Absolutely.
wrong, but to find a way out of it, right?
100%.
So, in that instant, when you're trying to figure out a really interesting, believable way to justify what you've just been doing, that's creative thinking. One example.
That's a
Um,
very good point,
but
actually.
right? If you are a parent and you have a child who refuses to eat vegetables, everyone's been there. They're like,
Hmm.
not doing it, don't like carrots, don't like broccoli, all these kinds of things.
Crazy kids.
So, in that moment, you're finding a way to make that more attractive to your child because you know they need to eat their vegetables. That's being creative, that's using creative thinking in order to solve a problem. Okay, so creative thinking is something that maybe not everyone has a natural aptitude towards immediately, but it's something that can be cultivated, can be nurtured, can be developed with guidance and with the motivation to do so. So yeah.
Yeah, I really think it's that what you said it there, and it's the solving a problem. Like that's
Hmm.
to me, someone creative is someone who can think of a way to solve a problem. Like it doesn't matter what the problem is. If you can think of a way around it, then you're being creative. You are
Yeah,
doing something
this
creative.
is it. So creativity is just that. It's the ability and the skill and talent to use your imagination in order to solve a problem, or make something better. So if you think about um, next time as a teacher you're in the classroom, and I say this you as a collective you for everyone listening as well, is think of a problem that's relative and related to the student's real life, something local, and start the question with how might we, and then pose your question. So it could be something like, for example, maybe there's a route that students all walk to get from one point to the school. And it's probably pretty boring. There's probably no trees. There could be a lot of things going on that make it not the most exciting route to walk, but it's the one it's fast.
Mm-hmm.
You could say something as simple as, how might we make that route more attractive to people walking that route? So that could encompass making it aesthetically more attractive. It could be putting benches so that if elderly people are walking along there, they are able to sit down if they need a break. There's so many things, and you can get the
Picking up
students
litter.
picking up litter. Yeah, all of these things. You can instigate and stoke the fires of their imagination by presenting a real world problem that's relevant to their life and not too big that it makes them go, oh, well, what's the point? There's nothing I can do about that. So always bringing it back to something that's really close to home and achievable is a way to start developing those skills. A really wonderful one is using, there's a method by Edward de Bono. He created something called the 6 thinking hats.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fabulous lesson. If you just Google it, there's usually full lesson plans available, telling how to use the method within your classroom.
Mm-hmm. And what is it? What does it involve?
So basically, what it is, it's taking the individual elements of thinking and breaking them down into separate jobs. So you could separate your students into groups and approach a problem from different angles. So, for example, you might have one group who are focused on the creative side of 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 something. Okay, so they're the ones who are brainstorming and getting all the ideas. You could have another group, and now it doesn't have to be that you separate the groups. It could just be that you approach each hat with the whole class at different times as well. So, for example, the blue hat would be focusing on the organizational and planning text of your problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The green hat would be focusing on the creative thinking aspect of the problem solving. The red hat focuses on the feelings and the instincts. So this is the empathy part. So trying to empathize with self and with end user, so to speak. Your yellow hat is looking at the positives. So the growth mindset. What are the benefits? What are the values? And your black hat is the one that's the risk management one. That's the one that's looking at all the potential problems with trying to solve the problem using your ideas that you've generated. So it gives the learners a really well-rounded way of approaching a problem from different angles so that they don't get overwhelmed with one particular thing.
Yeah. It just sounds, and it sounds like you can prescribe it for them as well, so they they have these different hats
and
now, and so it kind of helps
that's it.
them in doing that.
And you can jazz it up as well and make it more exciting by actually having colored hats,
Yeah,
and then
they could make them.
you will say, okay, guys, yeah, they could make them. You can say, okay, now we're getting our green thinking hats on right now. So that means right now, looking at this problem, we're not thinking about anything except what can we do? That's all we're thinking about. Or you'll say, okay, guys, we're going to get our red thinking hats on now. What we want to do here is not focus on the positives, the negatives, or what we can do, or the organizational planning context. What we want to do here is just think about, how do we feel about this problem? What are our gut reactions to this problem, for example? And helping them to, then that promotes going back to the social and emotional learning context of self-awareness, social awareness, and responsible decision making.
That sounds really fun, and I would actually like to do the whole hat making as well.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it
There's a
brings in some
fabulous
creativity.
organization. Yeah, that's it. There's a fabulous organization called Future Focus 21C, and they do a wonderful
You've
array of
showed me
learning
them
resources.
before.
Yeah, and they have such fabulous resources. They're mostly designed for secondary school learners, but they are adaptable. If you get in touch with them, and subscribe. The resources are open source, but you have to subscribe in order to get access to them.
Hmm.
But they're fabulous. They encompass social and emotional learning, STEAM education, and very importantly, the creativity and empathy parts of all of foundation of learning.
That's I really, I really like this, this social and emotional learning and so on and so forth, and the creativity. Where does it
Hmm.
link to you with STEAM education as well? So before we talk about STEAM
Well, that's
education, for anyone who
yeah.
doesn't know what it is, would you like to explain what it is first?
Yes, of course. So a lot of people will be aware of the term STEM education. So that represents science, technology, engineering, and maths. Okay. Now, STEAM education is where it's arts based. So it encompasses and includes the arts and highlights the importance of the arts for all the other skills. So when you think about it, in terms of science, technology, engineering, and maths, there all of these industries, all of these subjects need some element of innovation or creativity or divergent thinking in order to be able to problem solve, right?
Hmm.
So how how can you have a curriculum that completely negates the art side, which is the side that promotes that part of learning, the creative side, the creative thinking, the innovation, um, the think outside the box concepts, so, in terms of STEAM education, what that means for me is not just focusing on hard skills, but focusing on core and soft skills as well.
I'm really lucky actually. I'm currently working as I mentioned earlier, a sustainability curriculum,
Oh,
and
really? Fab.
it's brilliant. I can't really say much about it, but it does
Hmm.
talk about it's talking about STEAM. So it is it's about sustainability, but it's within that we need to signpost which lesson is in each one. So it's kind of a cross curricular thing. It's a STEAM curriculum, as it were. It's not, it's not science, it's not English, it's not any of these other different ones. Not engineering, not arts, not maths. It's all of them.
Hmm.
And the title of
It's all of them, exactly.
exactly,
Yeah.
it will be sustainability, but using all of those different aspects. And, so it's almost like, a kind of a giant project that lasts the whole year. I guess that would be how you kind of
Yeah,
look at it in a
exactly.
way.
Yeah,
Like, but it's actually a
exactly.
subject. And I don't know why we can't look at our subjects in that way. Why can't we look at our subjects as being a giant project for the whole year and work
Well,
on
this is
different
the thing,
aspects
yeah.
within it?
And if we can motivate the teachers of the different subjects to communicate with each other, you could actually interlink what you're actually going to teach through the year by um, linking your subject matters to a project. So basically, when you think about STEAM education and English language learning, although English is the subject, the reality is you're trying to help people communicate
Hmm.
and conceptualize and understand the world they live in through a different language. So
Yeah.
if you're doing that, why not um, blend the boundaries of what the subjects are and say, okay, these are actually interconnected, that without the arts, without creativity, you don't have science, technology, engineering, and math. They all involve a creative process. And there's not one method of inquiry. There are many different methods of inquiry in order to investigate something, to innovate, to research, so yeah, it would be amazing if schools and curriculums and teachers could find a way to blend or connect their subject matters. Um, because STEAM education is one of those wonderful approaches that empowers a teacher to use problem-based and project-based learning, and then it allows for the cross of disciplines.
And you mentioned something there before I say about it. Michelle has said that
Mm,
you and Bianca and I have exactly the same ideas and opinions about education. So I'm
yes.
guessing that's why she came along to listen. um,
Wonderful. Lovely to hear.
you mentioned that you know English, yes, English is the subject. When it comes to English language teaching, there are lots of teachers out there who use CLIL and so on and so forth. But even when you just
Yeah,
open an English textbook and you go through it
yeah.
and you look at the different topic areas in there, yes, okay, a lot of them are, very grammar based and very focused on vocabulary and grammar. But when you look
Mm,
at the topics that the student learning within those books, there'll be
yeah.
one about graffiti, and it's, okay, well, we can turn this into an art lesson, a creative lesson. We could even turn it into a lesson about crime if we want to, and like the boundaries of crime.
Well, graffiti is one of the most amazing topics to use. I mean, if you think about graffiti is one of the oldest methods of communication, right? It wasn't called graffiti back then, but before we had words and alphabets, we had pictures
Yeah,
on walls. So, like, you can use it to talk about history. You can use it to talk about geography and how the images for communicating stories were used in one country compared to another. You can look at it from an arts perspective in terms of artistic works, and paintings and the use of different materials for creating artworks. In terms of actual graffiti, in modern times, you can look at it as doing case studies on artists, for example, Banksy, or um, looking at places like Glasgow. Glasgow is one of the major cities for promoting graffiti artwork and allowing graffiti artists to develop their skill to create these beautiful murals that, if you think about it, actually bring a community together, especially if the community has been involved in the discussion about what that mural will be and what it will represent.
exactly. We actually have a few here in the town.
Hmm.
There's a really long white wall around the outside of the high school, and we've got a big like a trans pride flag on there. There's one that's about
Yeah,
raising awareness about breast cancer. There's one about the World Environment Day, which actually has my daughter's face on it, incidentally. But there is that kind of that street art there, and the word graffiti itself comes from Italian. It comes from little scratches. It means, doesn't it?
yeah,
Which, if you ever go to Italy or to Rome, and I think for me, one of the most amazing things, other than walking into the Colosseum thinking I was Russell Crowe,
hmm,
um, definitely had to be that you look at the sides and you can see the graffiti that they've done there. People have scratched
yeah,
their names into the chairs at the Colosseum, and
hmm,
you're like, wow, people have always been the same. Wherever we
yes.
go, we feel the need to write our name on something.
Well, you want to validate your existence. I mean, you want to belong. You want people to know you were here, and that's why all of these elements are so important, and even more so in modern times, that we nurture social emotional learning, that we include arts in STEM education, and that creativity and empathy are the foundations to all of that. Because the things that are coming, well, we've just experienced, that we are experiencing, and we don't know what we will be experiencing next, will require for ourselves and our learners to be flexible, to be um, creative in the way that they approach, and but also be able to manage themselves and be aware of their self and of their environments and others.
I I couldn't agree with you more. I am going to return to you in 30 seconds with
No bother.
some some slightly more particular questions, digging a little
Oh yeah.
deeper. So we will be back in
Fab.
30 seconds. Um, so we'll see you shortly. Well, hear you.
Okie dokie.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Katz Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides, and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out. Visit johncatbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
And we are back. I always find trying to press pause and unmute myself at the same time. I just sometimes wish, not that I had more hands, but that there were more pointers on the screen. If I could have two mice, or are they called mice? If you had two on a computer, or would it be mouses? Does it change? I don't know. I need to look into that.
Good question.
I need to find
That's
a
an English
lexicographer.
syntax question.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You just made me
I'm
think
going to
of
stop.
something that probably, if anyone anyone younger than 30 probably doesn't remember, but there was a cartoon when I was a kid called Inspector Gadget.
Oh,
And when you
yes.
said more arms, it immediately popped in my mind, go Gadget arms, And wouldn't that be a great thing to reinvent in the modern world using AI or whatever?
That'd be exceptional. It's quite funny actually. I'm quite tall, as people like to point out when they meet me, which thus means I have quite long arms. So I did have friends back in the day who would call me Inspector Gadget because I could just be sitting down and basically reach anything within kind of 4 meters, basically just stretch across the room. So length of arm is not an issue, just number of cursors. That's there's my problem. I need more cursors. Curse the cursors.
They should invent a keyboard that's similar to like a DJ's board for music. They have particular buttons for certain things, and then you, instead of needing the cursor, you would just press a button.
Oh, I think they have those for, I think they have those for streaming. I know when I do Renewable English Live, somebody said, "Oh, you should get a." No. I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I probably should, but I'm not going to because, I should. But then again, that's if I can find a second-hand one, I'll certainly think about it."
Yeah.
So, if I were looking to develop my professional skill set or personal skill set, I would obviously find you at your website, which is
BiancaPeel.com.
There you go.
BiancaPeel.com.
There you go. I'll put it in the description at the bottom. I am currently on it. I thought I'd let you say it as well.
Thanks.
You got a few more hits today. I've been looking at it quite a bit over the last week or so, to be honest, and I found it really.
In all honesty, it needs updated. So you're probably better to find me on LinkedIn. It's got more up-to-date information. I'm currently in the process of updating the website. So
it's so long, isn't it? Oh, I hate updating the website. Oh, it's the worst.
Oh, don't worry. Just get someone else to do it who has the skill. I'm like, that's a skill that's not one of my best ones, so I will outsource it to someone who does know what they're doing.
That is a good point as well. I do need to. I think I need a complete reboot of the Renewable English website. I think I'll just do that after that. I've done the third series. It can just be reworked and have everything put on there, looking pretty and looking.
That could be a project for your class. How might I improve this website, guys? I need your ideas.
Yeah, get creative. And any of you good programmers. And do you want to do it for free?
There you go.
So of course I wouldn't make them do it for free. I'll pay you in exposure. None of that. Sorry. So, So we can go onto your website, which is going to be updated. Better to go to LinkedIn to find you, you say at the moment. But I'd like to know, you mentioned, so we're helping prepare students for a future that we don't yet know about.
Yes.
So, how can we do that?
Well, the one thing that I've noticed that a lot of people struggle with, but actually if they can embrace it, it would actually help them a lot, is the process of working through a problem is more important than solving the problem. So in project-based learning, it's really important to let go of that need to have an end result.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teachers feel out of the depth, because they need to be the one who knows more than the students know.
Oh
But
yes.
the reality is you can go through the process with your students and learn as they learn. You don't have to have all the answers, but instead, as Sir Ken would say, be a guide on the side rather than sage on the stage, and um, so I would say connect with people who think the same, who want to make change. Um, Network to find out who those people are, uh, and allow yourself to let go of the need to control everything. Um, in terms of your learners, uh, try not to overwhelm them with too much of something that's new, because that in itself can cause stress. So little sizable chunks of new information and new ways of doing things definitely helps
It's
set
absolutely
the wheels in
what
motion for change.
I like to talk about that with when I talk about cultivating change makers. There is one section of it is all about empowering your students, and it is that idea of it being student led and you being there as a
Hmm.
teacher to guide them and to support them. But I think when it
Yes.
comes to projects, like we all
Hmm.
as teachers, particularly as I don't know, as as an ELT teacher, the project
Yeah.
would be okay, do a family tree. And then you show them the
Hmm.
project that you've spent hours making and maybe even laminating and showing them and saying, this is what a family tree looks like. And then they go off and they create their own that is basically just the same as yours, along the kind of the same
Yes.
lines.
So
And it's
yeah, in
having
that
that end
context, we're
goal.
yeah, trying to take away your need to show them what it should look like, because by doing that, you've already set the tone for the learning, and you've totally stifled the learner's creativity by showing them what it looks like. Instead, going through the ideation process with them allows for their creativity to shine rather than yours.
Yeah. But that was one thing that always strikes me with my students is,
Mm,
right, well, whatever goes up onto the board, their immediate question is, and it's not even should I copy this, teacher? It's just copy. And it's like, no,
hmm.
don't just copy this. So today
Yeah.
we did an activity at the end of class where we wrote the alphabet went up on the board, and they had to then come up with whatever word they wanted for each of the different
Hmm.
letters. And
Yeah.
a bit of encouragement, showing them that if possible, please chuck a verb in there. Maybe use a preposition or two. You
Yeah.
don't only have to use nouns. But I noticed that I'd
Yeah.
written it up on the board in a certain way that there were like four columns of letters, basically. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and of the 8 students, 6 of them wrote them up exactly the same in the same 4 columns across their
Yeah.
page. Um,
Yeah.
one of them just wrote a list down the side of the page, and another one of them didn't quite have enough time to copy it. So basically, wrote as many letters as she could from the alphabet that she could remember in that moment. And then
Oh,
later
bless her.
on,
Yeah.
as she went on, she added the other letters that she hadn't done yet. And
Yeah.
the letters she was missing were like J, P. It wasn't, the
Hmm.
last 3 letters she hadn't written on yet. It's just the ones she'd
Yeah.
missed because she'd been writing it down in her own way. And as a teacher,
Yeah.
the instant reaction you have as like I don't know, as a teacher is, wow, how did they not manage to put them all down in the right order? And then you think, well, maybe she has a different order of doing things, so she didn't have to do it
Exactly.
in
Her brain
the
works in a different
inverted
way.
commas right
Yeah.
order. Exactly. Um, and it's like fine. She still ended the task. She did the work with her partner. They made their way through it. They talked about it. They came up with the different words, and you know, in the end, they all had
Yeah.
something there. They all had different words, loads of nouns.
Yeah.
Obviously, they just wanted to do animals. Oh, as I said that, my dog barked, which was nice of her.
Yeah.
What's wrong, Estrella? Is it because I'm talking about
Yeah.
animals? Yeah, she's looking at me funny. So yeah, it really struck me in that moment that it's not. I shouldn't have written the letters on the board at all. I should have just said, write down the alphabet with enough space to write a word next to them,
Yes.
whichever way you want. Like but I'd written it
So
up
this
on the
this is
board.
a learning opportunity for teachers as well, is that we are so used to, because of the way teacher training is presented. So that's another area that myself and other friends and colleagues in other organizations work in, is um, approaching teacher training in a different way and giving yourselves permission to not be the one who dictates how everything should be done. Instead, leaving it open to interpretation to see how the brains of your learners work. So, like you said, um, inviting them to write down the alphabet but not showing them how to do it allows for them to use the knowledge that they already have, to exercise and um, complete the task. And then in doing so, the teacher then gets an insight into any knowledge gaps that the learner might have.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Because that was, for me, was really revealing, and what it basically showed was that student struggles to sit and copy something down in time. Like, so I learned that
Yeah.
from it, and I thought, yeah, next time just say write the alphabet, because one of the biggest
Yeah.
things that they said was, where's the ñ? Where's the Spanish N? Was their question, and it's like,
Yeah.
I, as a teacher, thinking, how have I not made it clear that there isn't the ñ in English? It just doesn't exist, and like,
Mm.
but it was only because they could see it. Because otherwise, I don't know. I guess they would have just
Yeah.
written it down in a Spanish way as they were writing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was really revealing, and as you say, it was a learning moment for me. Now, the next part of
Yeah.
the project is going to be really interesting to see, and I'm definitely going to leave it very much,
Yeah.
in their hands. And it's
Lovely.
not going to be a tailored thing, because we want them to come up with some kind of story or dialogue
Nice.
or idea using these different words. But it's
Yeah.
not going to be prescribed, and it's not going to
Fantastic.
have
Yeah.
it all written down, and it's not going to have like a list of what you have to write, because we
That's
get
it.
into
And
that
a bit of
habit of.
scaffolding in advance helps them.
Exactly. But we get so into this habit of, okay, for an FCE letter, you have to write this structure. For this, you have to write this structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, yeah, it was a learning moment for me, and I'm certainly going to take it into the next lesson as well.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds like an interesting lesson to be part of.
Feel free to come along. It's a bit of a long way to come, though. Glasgow to
Be a bit
Seville
of a
for
trek, but you never know. I might turn up.
just knocking on the door. You said I could come along. We only have a spare room. We don't have a spare boat, I'm afraid. We don't have any boats,
Lovely.
not even one. Um, sorry.
Oh, it's all good.
I'm obsessed with the fun on a boat. It's so rock and roll.
Alternative ways of living.
Certainly,
Why not?
certainly. And you get to also say, I live on a boat, which is really awesome. Now,
And you say that, and people think it's like a yacht, and you're like, no, it's a tiny house on the
no,
water.
don't
That's
tell
all
them
it is.
that. Let them think it's a yacht. Let them think it's a yacht. It's fine. I'm just going back to my boat. Oh, what? Your boat? Yeah,
Yeah.
my boat. It's cool. Now,
But
something we missed out on earlier that I would love to go back
mhm,
to. It
yes,
was it was within social and emotional learning, and something that
yes,
I think is so vital to any environment, not just
yes,
uh, a school environment. Because as you said, you mentioned something earlier. If you don't do it from a very young age, it's okay. Start doing it now. And for me, it reminded me
yeah,
of that Chinese proverb: "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." Um, and for
yes,
me, it's
exactly. Yeah,
relationship skills.
yes.
Relationship skills
This
is
is,
something that I need to work on. I think we all need to work on.
I think
What
we all
are
need
they, and
to be
what
honest.
can we do?
So, the way that I view it, and I say I view it this way because the way my brain works is different to every other person's brain, as theirs are to every other person. So, for me, it's the ability to uh, establish and maintain. So first to create, start, and then to keep going, right? Relationships that are healthy and rewarding. but that they're not with just one kind of person, that they're diverse, and with diverse individuals, diverse groups, in so that you're able to have a wider perspective on the world and be able to empathize with many people. So in terms of that, when you think about relationships, we're not talking about just romantic, right? It's all kinds of relationships. It's the ability to communicate clearly, to listen well. Now, this one's really important. When we say listen, there's as a teacher, a lot of people are aware as teachers about that context. Can you hear me? Are you listening? Right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
uh, the idea of active listening, being present and actually taking in what the person is sharing with you, and being able to check with them that you've understood what they're trying to communicate with you. So the clear communication skills, listening well or active listening, being able to work with other people and cooperate with others, um, to to be able to resist pressure that comes from social environments that's inappropriate. So, for example, in the playground, someone's making fun of another individual and joining in with that. No,
Hmm.
being able to say, no, that's not okay, and I'm not going to be a part of it. So, resisting inappropriate behavioral pressures, um, the ability to negotiate conflict, but in a constructive way, um, the ability to seek and offer help. That one's a big one because there's so many people who find shame in asking for help.
Yeah.
And the reality is, there's a lot of strength in asking for help. There's a lot of strength in being vulnerable. So these are all essential elements of relationship skills: communication, social engagement, relationship building in general, and collaboration and teamwork.
Now,
But
I
I'd
have a
add in there vulnerability too.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think asking for help is so important, and it's something I've learned to do. Not
Yeah.
maybe not enough still, and maybe not to enough people as well. Like it's a very close
Mm.
circle. It's that where you have the trust and the confidence to ask for that help,
Well,
and that
that's it.
doesn't
Yeah, I
mean
like that.
asking for money necessarily. I'm not saying
No,
in that
no,
respect, but for anything, can you take the dog for a walk for me, or can I chat to you?
exactly.
That could just that kind of thing. I've got a
Can you
problem.
help me lighten the load? Yeah.
Yeah,
And the reality is that a lot of people think that by asking for help, you're burdening someone else, but you're not. You're actually bringing them closer. So by letting people into your world, not just in the good times, but in the challenging times too, you're actually taking massive leaps and strides towards building more solid and healthy connections with the people in your world. And that's not just your family, but it's friends, it's colleagues, it's teachers, it's everyone you meet.
now I have another question about these relationships. Now,
Hmm.
you can work on your relationships, you can build your relationships, but there are then, toxic people in the world. These
Yes.
people exist. There's all kinds of toxic. There's all the types of toxic. There's toxic positivity, negativity, all of them.
Hmm.
What do we do when you know a relationship maybe has soured with somebody because they are one of those toxic people, and it's not possible to just cut them out of your life? That's where can we have the
Yeah.
self-awareness and the self-management to deal with that kind of thing, and how can we help our students do that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. That one is one I'm constantly working on myself, and to say I've got it sorted and figured out would be a lie. So, um, the learnings that I am experiencing in that context is by nurturing those skills that you develop through self-awareness, through self-management, social awareness, nurturing the skills of responsible decision making and your relationship skills. You then develop what I called your toolbox, so to speak, right? And
Hmm.
with it, with as with any DIY, you need particular for particular things. So when it comes to a situation where you have a person in your life that's toxic, but you can't not have them in your life, then you would draw upon these tools that you've developed through social and emotional learning and through creativity, through holistic approaches to learning. You take those tools and you'll apply them to given situations. So key elements of that are clear communication, so there's no way for things to be misunderstood. Active listening, so you can try and empathize and understand where that person's coming from and why they're behaving in such a toxic way.
Sometimes, in a
It's
particular
hard.
person, there is a particular person that I have in mind, and it's very obvious to see where it's coming from. I can see why she behaves the way she does towards, well, slightly to myself, but more so towards my wife, and I can very much see it. It's, it's obvious
And a
to
lot of the
see there
time,
certain things, but it's like it's hard to then empathize with that, because you're thinking,
it is.
why are you doing that?
Yeah, this is the thing. A lot of the time, if someone is behaving in a way that's unkind, that's toxic, it's because that's happened to them. It's embedded trauma responses, and they don't know any better. So trying to not internalize their behavior into your own sphere is quite challenging, but it's important to set boundaries. So that's another key, is boundary setting, what you will and will not tolerate in terms of someone else's behavior towards you, and what you expect and will offer in return. So that again comes back to the clear communication, the active listening, the ability to take on different perspectives in order to be able to communicate with that person.
That is fantastic. And as teachers, we need people like yourself who are there to help us do it within our first, so we can then pass that on to our
It comes back to our
students.
fill your own cup first. Yeah. So the idea, like we said right at the beginning of the show, is we need to, as teachers or also as individuals in our own lives, learn and develop those tools in our toolbox to fill our own cup. And then the brimming cup that we have and the overflow that comes from that then fills the cups of others.
It's brilliant. I'm delighted to have had you on. I feel a bit cheeky because I feel a bit like the last half hour there, I just had a little therapy session for myself. I'm hoping that
don't worry, I'll invoice you later.
I'm hoping that the people listening have been able to get something from it, because it seems that what you do goes a long way beyond education. It goes into to lives. It goes into the way we view everything, really.
Very much so. My ultimate goal is to share the knowledge and experience that I have had from my existence to help others to empower themselves to do the same.
Well, thank you for helping me today, and I'm sure for helping countless other people as well. It's been wonderful
pleasure,
today.
Harry.
It's flown
so
by.
much.
I looked up a few seconds ago and I was like, oh no, where's the time gone? Where's that time gone? Because most people say, oh no, an hour and a half, that's a really long time. And it's like, well, it is quite a long time. But when you have something that you're passionate about, that you want to talk about, then it seems to fly by. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute
Have a
pleasure.
Wonderful week.
But before you leave, where you said people can find you on LinkedIn, is there anywhere else they can find you, or any other particular place they should look for you?
In terms of all the things that I do, LinkedIn is probably the first stop at the moment while the website's being developed further. In terms of my creative artistic side of things, I'm on Instagram as Bianca Peel Artist. And that's another side hustle, so to speak, towards what I'm trying to share with the world. And those would be the main places. Yeah. So anytime you're looking, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, it's usually Bianca Peel EDU, as in education. You can find it on most handles with that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Harry.
I'll have a look for you, and I'll find you on Instagram as well, which I'll be
wonderful.
Able to see
and I might see you at one of the many conferences that are coming up this year.
Oh, there is a chance, although I won't be at IATEFL this year. So
Oh, is
if you're
this
going to be
okay?
there, I won't see you there, I'm afraid. There's there's a World Retail Conference the week after that my daughter's going to speaking
Oh,
at. So we've
fantastic. If
yeah, we've prioritised there. Um,
that sounds
so
wonderful. Well, best of
it
luck
should
with
be
that
fun.
one.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here, and
You too.
I'll speak to you very soon.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Good night,
Cheers.
everybody.
Thanks very much for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week, and we'll speak to you all soon.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from